Good evening and welcome to another edition of the HCC Experience. It's our weekly program gives us an opportunity to talk to the community of Hutchinson and broader about the exciting things that are happening at Hutchinson Community College and also some of the personalities that we have at Hutchinson Community College. This evening's guest is Dr. Cindy Haas. And Cindy, I might have you talk a little bit about your background. You came to Hutchinson Community College in June as our Vice President of Academic Affairs.
Thank you, Dr. Berger. I have been in higher education for quite a few years, 30-some to be exact, and I have worked in secondary, post-secondary, public, and private in Kansas and in Washington, as well as I spent a year with the Kansas Board of Regents working with Perkins funding and enjoyed that enormously. But I'm very excited to be part of Hutchinson Community College because there have always been good things going on here, and I welcome this opportunity.
Yeah, you've been involved in all sorts of different kinds of institutions, everything from proprietary to secondary and everything all along the way. Kind of tell us what your appeal or what the appeal is to a community college setting and what makes a community college environment unique and how you see perhaps that uniqueness fitting into Hutchinson Community College.
Well, I think the appeal for a community college is that it's comprehensive. It serves academic transfer, it serves technical education, it serves career development, it serves lifelong learners, it serves people who are just getting started and needing extra help, such as reading and writing and math. So in that regard, I think a comprehensive community college serves the needs of its population, whatever that may be, and it helps learners get from A to Z in their vernacular, whatever that may be. It's what they want to learn, and so they come to a community college with hopes and dreams. And the community college is able to provide service activities, learning, career development, sports, athletics, music, fine arts, all of the things that a community thrives on.
When you talk about the community college and all of the different facets of a community college, how does a community college get its arms around all those? You talked about the non-traditional student coming back just perhaps for the joy of learning and perhaps to gain a career. We talk about the transfer student. We talk about a technical program. We talk about community service, all being part of a mission of a comprehensive community college. How do you see a community college making this whole, making it part of what they do? And do you establish priorities within all those different components of a community college's mission?
Well, there have to be some priorities because of restrictions with resources and staff and funding and all of those kinds of things. But there are ways to always look for external support from partnerships, communities, businesses, ways to strengthen programming with external providers, supporters, help, booster clubs, whatever you may call that, helps develop it. A community college is not alone in the mission. It's the community part of the community college. It's the resources that can be garnered from state sources, federal sources, grants, funding, partnerships, communities, to provide all the things that students need when they come to us.
You know, we talk a lot about access at Hutchinson Community College and how important access is. How do you go about defining access? I know that's a multifaceted topic in and of itself.
It really is. Access to me is individual for each student, but the community college has to provide a range of learning, activities, events, all kinds of things that provide learning to not only the students but the community, the staff, internally, externally. It is kind of wearing a shoe of all things for all people within a limited amount of resources, and that does make it difficult to provide everything for everyone. So we do have to strategically plan what we can do in a given period of time, semesters, terms, years, and so on. And it requires a leadership team that's strong in terms of deciding and sticking to it, staying with the things that we've decided, and yet also being vassal enough to say, maybe this isn't working, maybe we should look in a different direction, maybe we need to turn a page.
You know, what part of access is certainly physical access, and Hutch Community College has done some interesting things as far as distance education. I know we are one of the leaders in online providership and also ITV. How important is that to a college, be it 2-year, 4-year, whatever it might be, in today's environment, that online component, the ITV component?
Well, I think online is the access point of all learning because it gives the student the ability to choose when and how and what at any time of the night or day. And many students are online at 2 a.m. Doing their homework or not, looking around, purveying resources. I think online, though, puts the learning right at the tips of the learner. They can choose time, place, date, and it provides such an access point that we've never had in higher education, because coming to school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is very different than getting on your computer and accessing it any time from wherever. They could be in the Bahamas studying their class, or we took a group to Australia at one of my universities, and we were online the whole trip, as well as having students in Australia. We also sent back recorded messages and events that we attended, such as going to Ayers Rock or seeing the Sydney Harbor, those kinds of things. So it provides access immediately to the entire world.
Yeah, we've probably been involved in online education for about 17 or 18 years. And it has grown significantly. About 30% of our total enrollment is online. Where do you see this going? If you were to look out 5 years from now, do you see that online area flattening and plateauing, or just see a continuous shift toward that direction as far as learning and our students?
Well, I think there are different kinds of students. Some need on ground, some need an instructor in front, some need group experiences with live students, some need, though, the facility to be able to come and go in an online. People think that online is the magic bullet. I'm not so sure it's for everyone. It requires a degree of technology expertise. It requires good writing skills. It's almost entirely writing. Although there have been Skype and other opportunities that make it more live and synchronous. But it requires the content, the technology, the writing, and the ability to navigate systems all at the same time, to look in a book, respond to other students, and to develop a different kind of process thinking than a class where you may sit and smile and raise your hand periodically. This means you have to be online, present, every time you tune in. You cannot hide in an online class.
You know, one of the things I think we're seeing is more interest in technical education going online, at least the didactic component of technical education. How can a college move in that direction, and why is that important to building our workforce and also providing services to our employers with that didactic component online? Now, I know the hands-on, there are certain things that you can never put completely online, but even some of the traditional hands-on type of experiences are moving to more of an online component. I know our biology has a lab, and our instructor would probably tell you that there is more learning that goes on in that online lab many times than that face-to-face lab.
Well, I'm very excited that Hutchinson has the paramedic program online, and the didactic portion is being taught. And then our department chair, Shai Miller, goes to visit various communities and to do the hands-on portion. So it can be done. It's a marriage of the best of both. It gets the Monday, Wednesday, Friday sessions online where the student can access at any point. And then it sets up the hands-on, which is almost all technical programs, very applied. The learning has to be, I know what's in the content, but I also need to be able to put it into practice. I need to be able to do it. I need to be able to function in that world. So technical education has a new venue now, in my estimation, and could grow significantly with all programs.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about hybrid classes at Hutchinson Community College and shifting more in that direction. Can I tell our viewers what a hybrid class is and perhaps what that means for not only our student population but also our faculty and staff and institution?
What's interesting, I was talking to some faculty from another institution over the weekend, and they said we're going backwards because we put everything 100% online, and now we're backing them out to partially on ground, which means the learning takes place in a classroom. So a hybrid class is partly on ground and partly online. It's partly writing and reading, it's partly doing again. So it's changing again another behavior. But the Department of Ed did a gigantic study on hybrid teaching and online learning, and that has become the linchpin. It is the most effective, that people can learn the content online as well as apply what they have learned in a face-to-face setting with an instructor. So hybrids are partially in a face-to-face setting and partially online.
So when they say going back, is that a bad thing then?
Well, it's just a change, I think.
Change.
It's a change because part of the class has to come back out of the fully online format into a learning session with an instructor.
You know, you talk about using a Skype, and that would certainly be one way of being interactive and maybe perhaps making more of a face-to-face experience. Do you think that's out there for our future? We have perhaps a teacher in Tennessee teaching a class for us online, and using Skype would give an opportunity for a student to have a dialogue one-on-one with that individual.
Yes,
is that an important component? Is that where we're going?
Well, I think Skype is an option. All things are options in learning, and for those students who need face-to-face, Skype is certainly one tool. There are all kinds of tools available in the online world to help make it more interactive, more collaborative, more of a welcoming learning environment versus printed material in a shell, which houses the online format.
Yeah, it used to be, I think when we first started online, the description have just talked about being almost a correspondence course online. All the printed material was online, just read the material, and then had some kind of reaction to the material, perhaps took an assessment, and went on down the line. How has that interactive component changed?
Well, the Department of Education expects substantive interaction in all online courses. There has to be a certain percentage of interactive environments, student to student, student to teacher, which is one of the best practices of undergraduate education, is that students and teachers interact and students interact, and that there's ongoing feedback, constant and ongoing feedback. And so that makes it a substantive interaction. It makes it more of a learning environment versus a response environment where a teacher puts in something and a student responds. It's got to have that same interaction that an on-ground class has, where there's give and take, constant feedback, support, dialogue, conversation.
I know I'm currently taking an online class, and the format of the class is every Tuesday material comes down from the provider, and the material, then you read the material, go through the material, and it's interactive. There are questions and quizzes within that block of material you get on a weekly basis, but there are also 3 or 4 discussion questions that one must respond to, and then you are also encouraged to respond to other classmates' posts as well. Is that kind of what you're talking about, is this interactive component of? So how do you assess that? How do you assess the quality of interaction, if that's going to be part of your grade, how do you as an instructor in a course and program like that decide whether it's quality interaction or just interaction?
Well, I guess after teaching English for 20-some years, you learn a writer's voice. You learn to understand who they are and what they're trying to say, what their belief system is, what their values are applied to the new material. And so I think some of the online courses I've taken as well as taught, you get that sense. It's not just a person out there behind a computer. It's a live human being that has a personality, a character, has a vent about the world, has an attitude, and contributes. And it seems that the students who really enjoy online become alive through that voice, through that either written or spoken if it's Skype. And you see that they have come along, just like an on-ground class. You see that they have grown or developed, or not, in a body of knowledge. So assessing it can be done similarly in a number of ways. It can be a written, posted exam. It can be a conversation. It can be a group project. It can be a collaborative effort. I know in one class I took, we had to look at various states and decide where would be the best state to send our children to school, where would be the best state to work, where would be the best state for advancing education. We looked at cost figures, we looked at ratios, we looked at graduation rates, we looked at who had ample state funding. We looked at a lot of factors to come up with, of the 50 states, where would we choose to send our children to school and work in education. So in our little group of 6 or 8, we had quite a conversation about which state would be the best. And it really applied us to the issue.
Yeah, there's so many components of technology and using technology for learning. One course I took a couple of years ago, there was a problem that had to be addressed between, the class was given a problem, and you were given someone to contact and solve that particular problem. And it was really interesting. One of the persons that was in our class was in the military in Iraq. And so we had to kind of work on our time zones to see what time it was there and what time it was here and what time would work for him, what time would work for me. And we had that conversation on the phone. Individual in Iraq who was taking the same class I was in Kansas. Really an amazing use of technology, and certainly something that talks about bringing that global view of education and really the world together.
Yes, it's very connected, and all the resources as well that are available online that can be immediately brought into a class.
This time I think we'll take a short break and hear more about other programs at Hutchinson Community College and come back again with Dr. Cindy Haas, Vice President of Instruction at Hutchinson Community College. Welcome back to the HCC Experience. Our guest this evening is Dr. Cindy Haas, our Vice President for Academic Affairs at Hutchinson Community College. We've been talking a lot about distance ed and perhaps some of the changes distance ed has brought about for higher education and perhaps how that's going to be expanded and augmented in the future. As we look past distance ed and look at some of the other facets of higher education, what would you see some of the biggest challenges are for the community college environment into the next decade? Cindy?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is going to be lack of resources, because the state funding on all levels is being reduced for various reasons. It's hard to support a population and provide health, education, welfare, and all of the services that are needed with limited funding, limited tax dollars. So I think one of our challenges is going to be finding our own funding through partnerships, grants, resources, making things happen on that level. It may be even that everything will become proprietary, that all institutions will be self-funded. I don't want to see that in my lifetime, but it may happen.
Again, we talked earlier about access being so important for a community college, and that really does some things to restrict access, doesn't it? I know, looking at some of the university environments, and Kansas is perhaps a little bit different than some, but as much as 10 or 12 years ago, the Michigan State was receiving more of its money from private sources and student tuition than it was from the state of Michigan. There have been some universities and some states that have said, you know, I'm not sure why we call ourselves the blank university, whether it be, you know, Michigan or whatever, because they aren't providing as much support. So, you know, where does that I guess that balancing act go, you know, when a state doesn't any longer support higher education? How can it sever itself, you know, from a governance of a board of regents, governance of any entity, when that particular state isn't providing any level of support to it?
I think that's a difficult question. It's something we're going to be grappling with in the next 10 years. And it isn't just Kansas. It's nationwide. Every state is struggling with trying to provide all the service, support, access, collaboration with limited resources. And one of the things that can help us and also hurt us is technology, because it can reduce all of the things that we have to do by using a more technological implementation, but it also requires keeping current and having the latest technology, because that's where business and industry is. So you can't offer a computer science class without having the best, latest models. They cannot be trained on something that's outdated. And so it's not just hardware, it's software, it's networking, it's systems, it's graphics, it's the whole 9 yards. It's communication tools, which the world runs on now. So while technology could be a help to us, it can also be a hurt, because it's difficult to keep up with the costs of all that.
And one of the things that we look at Hutch Community College certainly is we have about 47% of our students enrolled in technical education courses. And tech ed is a growing component of what we have. We're an allied health training center of excellence, having virtually all of the allied health technical programs that are available. And staffing is an issue for us, especially in nursing. When you have a nurse being able to make considerably more out in the field than he or she can make at Hutchinson Community College, how do you attract and how do you recruit for those slots in technical education when the private sector can afford and does afford a better opportunity for these people who are likely instructors?
Well, again, I would say that I think we're going to have to look at firmer partnerships between the health providers and what education can offer. And so we may have joint positions. We may be part hospital, part doctor's office, part educator, because they can afford a larger salary, and we are limited by our contract, we are limited by our state funding, we are limited by our ability to attract. So it seems that we're moving more into the arena of greater partnerships with our affiliations, with our clinical sites, with our hospitals, with our providers.
And we talk a lot about collaboration at Hutchinson Community College, and this is certainly an example of how that might have to happen for us to continue providing that quality educational experience for our students.
And then the other thing is that we could hopefully grow our own, having folks come in and help them with their educations so that they would get to the level that's acceptable to a health provider accreditor or an agency that says, yes, you may have this program, such as respiratory therapy or medical surge, when they have strong accrediting bodies behind a profession.
I know the State Board of Regents has provided, and legislature has provided some incentives for nurses to go back and get their master's degrees, taking care of a component of that tuition to try to build that pool up. And that has been beneficial to Hutchinson Community College.
Yes. The issue isn't really anymore that we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough teachers of nurses, which has grown largely in our future, in the state of Kansas, as well as some other states have that issue as well.
You know, some of the new programs that we're looking at Hutchinson Community College, certainly we have a physical therapy assistant program that's in its second year of operation. And in January we'll be starting a respiratory therapy program. Do you see, how does new program, how do you implement a new program in an environment where the economics are pretty constricted?
Well, I think you have to decide, and your constituents have to decide if that's a necessary program for this area and for the students and for the services, for the businesses and industries. And if it is, then you have to find ways to garner support through used equipment, through grants, through outside funding, through whatever allocations you can. And it has to start small. It has to begin with a small class, but it can grow. It just takes more time because you can't start with the premier. You can start with a small operation and attract students and serve their needs, and then the reputation grows, and it is a good program, solidly built.
You know, most of our programs, technical especially, have their genesis in the community coming to the college and saying there's a direct need for this program. And certainly we've been able to respond. But I guess the third part of that equation is not only the ask and the response, but also the support.
Yes.
And that support can be multifaceted too. It can be in the form of a teacher that they provide, perhaps a facility they provide access to, or other kinds of support with equipment.
Yes, I think all those things are vitally important to a program, and to also not abandon ship, to continue to help and support as the program grows and develops. We need clinical sites, we need places for our students to practice, we need help with clinical coordinators so that there's the liaisoning between the facility and the educational practice. And it's almost like the early 16th century where there were apprenticeships and students came through an educational program and then went to work for an apprentice to learn the rest.
Well, all in all, it's a very exciting time to be involved in higher education. And, you know, the challenges of economic constraints really perhaps are things that we can meet and certainly overcome. And that's part of the fun of it, isn't it? To be able to see those possible roadblocks and find out ways to go over through them or around them.
I would agree heartedly that it is the challenge of trying to provide that education for each student who wants one.
Cindy, it's been very good having you as a guest on the HCC Experience. Wonderful to have you here this evening. And again, we thank not only Cindy, but also the viewers out in the community for being a part of the HCC Experience, and also the wonderful support that you provide to Hutchinson Community College. I'm Ed Berger. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.